So I'm Brittany Fair. When I was 7, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I was just in school. I just kept telling the teachers I was gonna throw up. My head was hurting really bad. I would come home, tell my parents, I threw up at school. I have a bad headache. I've been falling down. And so those things worried my parents. And then eventually, my eyes started to cross in towards my nose, and they knew something was really wrong. So they sent me to Christ Children's Hope, where I was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor and given 9 months to live.
And your initial surgeries were with which hospital?
My first one was with University of Illinois, and then my second one and the following were with Lurie. But I also had a lobectomy because I started to have some seizures. I had a lobectomy where they removed my temporal lobe, part of my hippocampus, and my amygdala. And it cured my seizures, but I did have a stroke in that surgery. So I had my first brain surgery when I was 7, and shortly after I had a second because they couldn't get the full tumor out with my first. So I want to say it was about a month or 2 later I had another surgery to see if they can remove the rim of the tumor that they left in, because it was a pretty malignant tumor and they wanted to get as much as they could out before I started chemo.
And then you found out later that they didn't get the whole thing out.
They did not get the whole thing out. We found out 11 years later that my tumor started to wrap around my brainstem. So every time they would go in to take part of my tumor out, they're missing about 80% of my tumor. So I've had so many surgeries, but I was just going to remove just a little tiny bit compared to what they weren't seeing on the scans, because scans back then, they've improved a lot over the 21 years.
Yeah.
They didn't realize that my tumor was wrapped around my brainstem and a lot of my cranial nerves and things like that. They said I had a malignant astrocytoma, but what they didn't realize was that I had a really, really rare astrocytoma called a pylomyxoid astrocytoma. So I was, in all reality, I was misdiagnosed when I was first seen. But it didn't take very long before they properly diagnosed me with the really rare astrocytoma that I currently have now.
And part of it was just so new, correct?
It was so new. I was one of the first in Chicago diagnosed with it, and I'm one of the longest living with the tumor properly diagnosed. I was in an anatomy class, and my teacher thankfully was an oncologist. And during that class, I had a brain surgery, and I went to school a couple days later with staples in my head. I have a lot of hair, so I can cover the staple with my hair, but I told him, I just had brain surgery the other day, so if I'm not feeling my best, I just want to let you know. But I try to do everything normal. Like when I was little, when I was 7, I would always say to my parents and my grandma, I just want to be regular. I just want to be regular, so I try to do everything I could do to get my bachelor's and then get my master's degree. Now I'm married and I want to have kids one day. They're hoping it's only going to be a six month regimen, and I'm hoping so too. But it is it's a very strong chemo. So just because my tumor is so rare, there's not much treatment out there for it, and let alone cancer. Especially since I do have a pediatric brain tumor, there's not much research, and there's not many treatments. And so this Temidor they're putting me on, it's going to be a really strong chemo, but they want to they rather do a strong chemo than something that may just appease my tumor and not really do much with it.
Isn't it true that they told you that the Temidor wouldn't take your whole tumor away, but just shrink it down some, and then they're going to try to put you on something else later?
They want to do the Temidor to see how much it can shrink down my tumor to try to make it stop growing. But then they're hoping that possibly some sort of gene therapy can help the situation even more. But since this gene therapy they want to put me on, maybe eventually, it was only founded and only realized to be helping tumors last summer. So my doctor at Hopkins has never put anyone on this particular gene therapy.
It's still a clinical study.
Okay.
So she wanted to do the Temidor first because she was a little bit nervous to do a gene therapy that she's never put anyone else on before. Just so hoping that I could shrink it down a little bit before she just that clinical trial.
So
They've had such a hard time trying to figure out what her tumor was actually, like what the mutations were and stuff, that they've actually sent her tumor slides to what the
American Cancer Society, all sorts of different like knowledgeable people. They just realized that the mutation I have was also founded very recently.
And your oncologist at Johns Hopkins, didn't she actually have like a seminar? The American Cancer Society contacted her to do a seminar just on Brittany's
My tumor, yeah, because it's so rare.
So
Mhm.
do you feel like you're making medical history already?
I hope, like, with the struggles that I've been through, I hope it in the long run it's helping, like, children in the future that they don't have to go through all these hoops to try to be diagnosed properly or try to get the correct treatment.